Hello friends, welcome to Indian Art History. I'm going to start an art history channel today, uh, and that's what this channel is now. So, most of the alternate history channels on YouTube have a very European centric focus. So, I wanted to do something which was focused on the alternate histories of India and China mostly. So, today we are starting with the first one, which is what if the Maratha Empire had successfully united India? So, the Maratha Empire, for those of you who don't know, was an empire which was created by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj in 1674, and it continued to dominate Indian politics up till the death of Madhav Rao in 1772, and it was dissolved in 1857. So, this is an alternate history which deviates from our history in 1751. Alright, so this world map is around the world map of 1751. Obviously, I have not made all the changes, so this, I have only changed the parts which will be relevant to this video. So, yeah, this is generally how the world looked like in 1751. So, coming back to India here. Mm. The yellow part is the Maratha Confederacy, or at that time it was just the Maratha Empire. Uh, in 1751, the split in the timeline here is the war with Bengal. So in 1751, the Maratha Empire had attacked Bengal and seized Odisha. Now Odisha was seized and the rest of Bengal was put under a tributary system. So as I was saying, the rest of Bengal was put under tributary system, and it was basically forced to pay a lot of money. And the Maratha Empire also started raiding and committing some very horrible acts in Bengal. So like there's this thing called the Burgi Raiders who basically destroyed Western Bengal, which is kind of ironic. Current the Maratha Empire was created to stop raids in the first place. Shivaji Maharaj would not be proud. Anyway, so in this alternate timeline, instead of agreeing to the Nawab of Bengal's offer for peace in 1751, the Maratha Empire continues and completely takes over Bengal, which sorry, like this, which results in the Maratha Empire looking like this. This also means that the Burgi raids, which happened in Bengal in the 1750s, do not happen. As a result, the economy of Bengal isn't completely destroyed. So, yeah, Bengal still remains very rich, and as a consequence, the rest of India is also very rich now. So, this causes some very interesting ripple effects down the line. So, let me give you a bit of context as to what happened here. So, after the conquest of Bengal, the Marathas continued upwards into northern India and Afghanistan, but they were defeated in 1759 by the ruler of Afghanistan. This purple nation here is Afghanistan, by the way. So, yeah, this purple nation here is Afghanistan, which completely destroyed northern India and the Maratha force. Third, in this alternate history, because uh, because there is no horrible acts committed in Bengal and in what in Rohilkhand. Let me give you more context. The Maratha Empire, when they grew to encompass all of India, northern India, Maratha Empire was created basically to protect the Marathi people from the Mughal invasion. But when they grew to take over most of Mughal empire, they started like literally killing all the Mughal nobility and Islamic people of Rohilkhand and Bengal, which doesn't make sense for the Maratha Empire. It makes about as sense as the end of Game of Thrones actually. So in this particular scenario, they don't do that. As a result, the people of North India don't support the Afghans, except for the Ouds. The Ouds would have supported Afghans, but anyway, even in real history, the Afghans almost lost the Battle of Panipat. So in this version of history, they are completely destroyed at the Battle of Panipat. As a result, the Marathas take over the Afghan Empire, yoing, and Kashmir, because it was basically in the way, and they would have taken it anyway. They did take Kashmir anyways for a very short time. So in this particular case, they take Afghanistan, like even in the real world, they did manage to take quite a large portion of Pakistan and Afghanistan, even after that loss. So if they do not lose like that, they basically would have conquered this part anyway. As retribution against the Oudh rulers, they would probably also take the oaths. And so, yeah, in this alternate version of the 1760s, India now looks like this. This has some serious consequences down the line, as we'll discuss in this rest of the video. But and right now, let's just take a look at what is happening in the rest of the world. Uh, Switching focus to Europe. I said I started this channel because I wanted to move away from the Eurocentric view, but still, there was a big war going on in Europe known as the 7 Years' War, which was basically between England and Prussia on one side and France, Spain, Portugal, and Russia on the other, basically. So they lost. Fra- like France and uh, the France and Spanish side lost. That still happens in this timeline, and yeah, and the only difference is the Marathas enter this war on the British side probably because and they use that to take the Portuguese colony of Goa and the large French possessions in Tamil Nadu. As a result, the Maratha Empire in 1763, when the war ended, looks a lot like this. Now, this is already almost as large as the Mughal Empire was, and because Bengal has not been completely ruined, this is almost as rich as the neighboring Qing Empire. So, what are the consequences of such a united India over the future course of world history? What does culture look like? What does history look like? Well, let's see. So, uh, my headcanon is that in that battle, Vishwasnath Rao, who was the heir apparent to the Peshwa throne, he actually died in the Battle of Panipat in the our world. He also dies in this world. Why? Because that allows Madhav to come on the scene. Now, that and this much larger, richer empire basically means Madhav would have been able to, would probably not have contracted tuberculosis. So, let me give more background check. Madhav was one of the greatest rulers of the Maratha Empire, basically. He was a peshwa, which is the position of prime minister, but at that point it had become a hereditary position. Anyway, so he basically almost completely conquered Mysore from Hyder Ali, and he would he probably would have united all of India if he had not died from tuberculosis at age 27. Now he died. He contracted tuberculosis because he had a scuffle with his uncle Raghunath Rao, uh, who was the commander of his armies. Now, the reason for why the scuffle involves some complex Game of Thrones esque politics we do not have time to get into today. But suffice to say that if the Battle of Panipat was a much bigger success, and like the reign of Balaji Bajirao lasted a little bit longer. This See the relationships between Balaji Bajirao, the previous Peshwa, Madhav Rao's father, and Raghunath Rao was strained because of the loss at Panipat. If there is no loss at Panipat, that removes one of the most major causes of the struggle. So yeah, the struggle doesn't happen. Raghunath Rao is still on the Peshwa side. He doesn't get put into house arrest. As a result, the army of Hyder Ali is destroyed here, and by 1780, India is more or less unified. Again, as Madhav Rao doesn't die, he probably manages to unite India before his death. Instead of time, let's say he dies at the age of 60 or something. But anyway, so with a united India like this, you basically now have a superpower. No, seriously, this this condition of India is pretty OP. Will cease fire very very quickly. But first, let's go back to politics time. So in our real world, in 1757, uh, the British actually took Bengal, and they also took and basically they used Bengal to further their entire empire building goals. Now let me list off the quick list of consequences of the conquest of Bengal. Bengal was destroyed. Bengal's destruction meant that India was financially ruined. That is part of the reason why India actually became poorer. Bengal was by far the richest part of India. Loss of Bengal just crippled India. Anyway, so Bengal was ruined. The crop fields of Bengal were used to grow opium, which was used to addict China, which resulted in the two opium wars, because of which China basically lost all of its power. Then here in in India, the growth of opium instead of food crops on what had been agricultural land led to some of the worst famines, which completely ruined India. Then this also led to what, because India. was available, Britain was able to ignore the loss of its 13 colonies, which probably is what led to American independence in the first place. And also because of the presence of Indian cotton fields, Britain didn't support the South in the American Civil War. Whew. Anyway, so with a united India, none of that happens. Now, unlike most Indian powers, which could have taken the stage in India, the Marathas were actually expansionist. They actually had a navy, and they probably would have started colonizing elsewhere. See, the Marathas were driven by a sort of mission to restore India's original culture, sort of, which, excuse me, I'll be back with you. Alright, guys, I'm back. Anyway, so yeah, United India in 1760, 1780 at the most. So, what are the consequences of this? Well, this new India would probably be a very militaristic and expansionist one. Even the Peshwas and the Maratha Empire both viewed themselves as the Hindavi Swarajya, that was the official name. So they would likely, in the late 1700s, early 1800s, start their own wave of colonization. Mainly, it would be in the Indonesia. Why in the Indonesia? Because during the Middle Ages, Indonesia had more or less been like a bunch of Hindu kingdoms, mm, and the the Hinduis, and it was later like Islamized. Basically, that's way oversimplification, but basically it was a bunch of Hindu kingdoms who, after North India was overrun by Islamic rulers, was gradually Islamized itself, and it was Islamized more rapidly and more completely. And as a side note, the rulers of Tanjore, means the noble family who got Tanjore, considered themselves the true heirs of the Chola Empire. So they would probably try to reconquer all the old Chola territories. That means probably Sri Lanka and Indonesia, at least the closer parts of Indonesia, as well as the Malay Peninsula, would probably very quickly become colonies or tributaries of Mughal India. Another thing to note is Africa. Well, at this point, the Ottoman Empire was basically dying off. This is how it looked when the Marathas had just come into power. And wait a minute, yeah, I'm back. So anyway, the world after that probably looked something like this. The Ottoman Empire lost a lot of territory to Persia and Russia. Russia basically takes over all of Poland, and all the thing that did happen in the real world still happens here. At this point, it's the influence has not yet reached Europe. The ripple effect has not. So this is the world in the early 1800s. So again, the Napoleonic Wars and all also still happen. They probably still result in the same outcome. But yeah, with Algeria being yoinked by Russia, sorry, France, and all that good stuff. Anyway, Napoleonic Wars are done, and we can move to what is probably gonna be the most big change, big departure from actual Indian history. So in this version, India is not a colony, but rather a colonial superpower. Let's see how. Given the Peshwa's expansionist nature, they would probably take over Burma. Probably. They would also probably make Thailand and Indochina their tributary, because that's just how it would have gone. So yeah, the ones which are this slightly lighter color are the tributary states. Tributary, this, and this is how the tributary state should look. Now, at this time, I do imagine that the Maratha Empire would colonize a lot of Africa, and I mean a lot of Africa, for pretty obvious reasons. This much larger, much more powerful India has pretty good reasons to colonize elsewhere, because again, it is one of the only non-European powers with a significant navy at all. So it would, and it probably did come into conflict with both Britain and France, who are trying, and the Dutch, who are trying to trade out of here. So it would probably be much more involved in European politics. It would also want to control the Red Sea, mainly because it's important for trade. The Red Sea is very, very important for trade to and from India. So, in this version, instead of the British building the Suez Canal, it would probably be the Marathas. And again, colonization of Africa would just be much, much easier for India to do. India is right next to Africa compared to Europe, at least. Like the eastern coast of Africa, the command lines are much, much shorter. And unlike most of Europe, which most Europeans who didn't have the resistance to the heat and the temperatures of Africa, India is a tropical country. India is pretty hot, and it also has most of the same diseases that Africa did back then. So yeah, India would probably have a much easier time colonizing most of Africa. So expect in the early 1800s to start seeing Indian colonies pop up all along the east coast of Africa. It would probably first take over Ethiopia and the Western Arab Peninsula. Historically, India always had a presence. Indian merchants were always present in Yemen and all. So it would probably be much easier for India to take over this area under the Peshwas. Given that the Indian colonial effects and all, India would probably end up supporting Germany in the unification of Germany. Yikes. What went wrong here? So, India would probably be the first major power to gain a colonial empire. Like, look at this. Look at this map. The only one who had a significant colonial empire at this time was Spain and Portugal. Anyways, so India will probably continue expanding upwards, because see, the most profitable regions to India are this part of the Mediterranean, and it definitely would want the advantage being free of Ottoman taxes and stuff. So they would probably take you. They would probably also attend the Berlin Conference. I, I do expect that to happen, uh, maybe it would be the only non-European power represented there or something. I don't know. So, anyway, flash cut to a post-Berlin conference here, Europe. Anyway, so it probably Africa ends up like this. India would probably wage a large war against the Ottomans, and at this point the Ottomans were already cuffing into their handkerchiefs, so a much stabler India could very easily win that war against the Ottomans, and from multiple colonies here. Yeah, so basically I think that's what the Indian Empire would look like. It would probably not hold on to these to most of Mediterranean coast for very long, but on the other hand, it would probably expand much further south along the eastern coast of Africa, and well, given that atrocities I have established as out of character for this version of the Indian Empire, yeah, it would probably look a little like this. So yeah, that's what would happen if the Peshwas had the battle. India would have a colonial empire looking probably like this. China would hold its act together for much longer, and well, most of the post-Napoleonic politics in Europe wouldn't be the same. British India was really a big source of power and wealth for Britain, a very large source actually. So Britain would not be that important. On the other hand, France probably would be much more powerful, and it would probably have a large colonial empire in Africa, and there would probably be a large Franco-Maratha war or whatever. That would probably be like the World War One of our scenario, of our what of our timeline. And honestly, beyond the late 1800s, it's difficult to predict. India would almost certainly take over this part of the world which I've shown, and it probably would eventually Indianize this entire area. So because yeah, hmm, the eastern coast of Arabia is already being Indianized anyway by a large population exodus. So India would possibly have done it earlier if it was united. Marathi would be a much more dominant language instead of just being restricted to western India. It would probably be spoken in the whole of India, much like how Hindi is today. English would nowhere be as widely spoken as it is in today's time, and most importantly, Europe would be much poorer actually. In this scenario, much of the things which destabilized India and the Qing Empire and led to them to lose their world dominance powers simply doesn't happen. Qing remains isolationist, powerful, but just the sleeping dragon basically, and it continues on its own merry way while India becomes an expansionary power, and the rest of the world it's really hard to say. India would probably fight some wars with Russia over Central Asia, and well, I really don't see. the wars as coming to anything more than a standstill. Maybe India would extend as far as Fergana or something, but uh, with the Marathas